Just like that, we're live everywhere. Welcome everybody who's watching us, and welcome to the Four Amigos now. So, Randall, how are you?
Awesome.
Neil, how you doing?
Good as always.
And we'd like to welcome our special guest, Juan Fernandez. Welcome, Juan. How are you doing?
Good to be here, guys. I'm doing great.
You're living in the sky, man.
I'm here. I'm
There
in the
you
sky.
go. You're floating around up there in the skyscraper. I love your background. All right. So, this edition is about scaling your cybersecurity managed services and particularly targeting MSPs and MSSPs in how they could figure out how to make that work. And so, there we go. Let's kick it off. First of all, Gwen, I'm going to have you introduce yourself a little bit before I mess it up. But what I know about Gwen, he's had a few MSPs, he's sold them, he's perfected them, he's perfected his skills. Now he's got a new gig,
Yeah.
hackware, that he's helping solve the cybersecurity world problem. And
Yeah.
I mean, he just knows a lot of stuff, and we're going to pick his brains today. I want to let you give your version of that in case I messed it up.
No, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. I think for everyone that's out there, it's like, why is this guy here? One of my biggest claims to fame was, I have had a couple MSPs at this point. My last one, I took zero to about 20 million in about 6 years and exited back in September. Then I created a company called the MSP Growth Coalition to kind of help, teach people how to come up with that strategy, process, procedure, and, how to actually, go to market with managed services and, meaningful ways. And also an investor in a number of different things, as well as, cybersecurity. And obviously now I have the global channel chief role as well for Hackware, which is a cybersecurity education, artificial intelligence, phishing training simulation company. So it's really fun. I'm having a lot of fun. Hopefully we can have a really great conversation with, how do we do this? So I'm
Well,
happy to be here today.
Gwen, can you pack more in your life? I'm not even sure, but we'll find out today. We'll pick your brains today. So we got Randall, of course. He's running our channel partner alliance program with all the mastermind stuff, and Neil, he's a god in the platforms of creating businesses and bringing them together. And if you don't want to know who these people are, check out their LinkedIn profile, follow them. They got all kinds of cool stuff. So without further ado, I'm just going to kick this off with my first question. You know, why today on cybersecurity should we care about as an MSP? Why is that? Why does that matter today?
I think there's a number of different reasons that we should care. First and foremost, if I'm looking at it through the lens of a business owner, I talk about limits and liabilities all the time, and if we touch it, we're responsible for it. And I don't think that a lot of us pay attention to that. And it's really like, if I go in and work on somebody's infrastructure, or I get called to touch something, and if something happens, like, I've inherited a lot of liability on that. So really understanding, what it is that we're doing, and, how we're doing it, and really stitching in that best practice of, try to stay in business. I think that's really one of the biggest opportunities. And then number two, I think the second opportunity is the consumer aspect, right? This whole remote work, we've increased the threat landscape exponentially over the last couple of years as we, went from command and control now to the distributed workforce and work from anywhere. Our attack surface has drastically increased over time. And so now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we harden back? Like, we just perfected command and control just a moment ago. It's like I had them all in a box and they were behind a firewall and I could control it. I had to worry about a little shadow IT, but I had a lot of control around that infrastructure. And now I don't, right? Now I have so many more things that are, I'm open to a lot different, different threat vectors from every different angle now. So I think that's number two. And then I think number three, the world is moving super fast. And I talk about this all the time from a consumer perspective. And I always ask the question in large groups is, how many people know how to effectively get on the internet? It's because of the education aspect, right? We were never taught. It moved so fast and it grew so quickly that all of a sudden now here we are at the forefront of this new world, right? As we face this new artificially intelligent world, or this new, virtual reality world. We moved so fast over the last few years that we didn't actually ever really truly get education on how to actually get on the internet. So there's a lot of different things. And I think those three different points are very important notions to pay attention to, because they're all things we're having to combat, right? We're having to come at it from a business perspective. We're having to come at it from, protection perspective, and now an education perspective. Like, we have these different roles for managed services that we have to play now in this new modern era. So that's my thought.
What's really cool is you touch it, you own it. It's like those signs you go into those stores, you break it, you own it, type
Yeah.
thing. And so that's a good point. Good points. And, Randall, what do you want to add to that? And then Neil, you can jump in.
Well, I wanted to bring in a local story from my own neck of the woods, Montreal. So in one of our boroughs in Westmount, they got hacked, and it's a ransomware, but it's just showing how things are evolving. Ransomware used to be, we encrypt your data, pay us some money, and we'll give you the keys to unlock your data. And we got really good at backups, so we say, like, never mind, we're not going to pay you. We got all our data, we restore it. It takes a while. But now they're going like, no, we have a copy of your data, and if you don't pay, we'll release it on the dark web with all the information of your clients. And this is a city, so there's a lot of information there, and it's getting to that point where the hacks are evolving. So as we have solutions, there's new problems. So Juan, how can we effectively deal with these new problems? What's your way to stay ahead of the curve?
It's really interesting that you say that, right? So as I think the biggest challenge that we have is the human element, right? We have to be an educator, right? If we look at the process for best practice in solving a cybersecurity incident, look at the NIST controls, look at any control. The last thing we're supposed to do in reporting a cybersecurity incident or remediating it is educating the end user. And I think that it goes back to the best practices of how do we help people understand that they're the challenges of these things, because a lot of these ransomware things are coming in through ways that aren't necessarily hacks. Like it's not really that they're getting in through like breaking through the firewall. It's actually human, right? We're actually able to hack the human to get in, whether it be through, some sort of or some other meaningful way. So it's really an opportunity for us to really look at best practices than it is.
Hold on a second. Just hold the thought. Are we getting a little bit of feedback? Can everybody else mute their microphones? See if we've got someone in there. Kind of annoying, isn't it? Look at that. We're hacked in real time. So I don't know. So let's continue. See how it is. Just pay attention.
Yeah, we're basically hearing a background conversation. So
yeah,
continue. Go ahead.
I think that it's the educational component, right? I think that we have to first help everyone understand where we're at in order to bring us up to speed. It's like, okay, guys, I know you don't think that our data is important as a business. Like, you don't think that your personal data may be important, but the business's data, we have a social responsibility to the business and our livelihood and the lives of the people that work here that we all have to be very, very educated about so that we don't make mistakes that cause where cities are now being inconvenienced, right? And I often say this, right? How many people play the lottery? Like, I'm always curious how many people actually play the lottery, because the reason I ask that question is, if I'm willing to pay for chance, how much more am I willing to click chance for free? And this is what happens, right? It's like, oh, well, I see this really great opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and click that. Next thing you know, I've given out my password and somebody's logging into our infrastructure, and boom, now I got ransomware. And it's like, I didn't know. Right. So how do I, to answer your question, Randall, how do we avoid that? I think the biggest thing is just really putting our shoulder into like investing in best practice and teaching people the right way to actually interact in a business and actually, pay attention to what we're doing and making sure that we actually are very cognizant of how we do business on the internet.
Even Amazon has vowed to do some PSAs next month, I believe. So they're trying to reach the users, and I think that's the you can have the best firewall in the world, but it's still Bob in accounting that clicks on the link that lets everything in and everything. So really, we're going to protect against Bob.
Bob,
I agree.
Bob changed his name, Bob. Neil, what's your take on it?
Well, I think what's very interesting about both what Juan was saying, but also Randall's comments there is underlying this is massive cultural change, which has to happen at the heart of the MSP. So putting my salesperson hat on, as a salesperson, historically, I lost all interest the minute the sale was over. That was my only purpose in that organization, was close the sale, get them through the door, forget about it. So there's zero responsibility. And I think this is kind of the evolution of that sales professional role and other team members within the organizations. Is how do we continue to make people truly take ownership? And we only do that with cultural change in the organization. If the MSP don't make the staff feel involved and actually as almost like they're a stakeholder in the MSP, it's very difficult to get people to buy into these things. So I think it's very interesting dialogue, and it also links back to our last math chat about the risk of shadow IT, the fact that there's so many different vectors which we can be approached for. And the other thing which Juan talked about in his introduction, which I thought was super cool because I loved it. I picked up one word, and the word was, with his new role, it's like fun. And actually, that's what I think is key also within the channel, is that if we can go to the potential customer and sell this to them, this is fun. There's something here we do which will actually really protect your business, add value, but as the fun word associated with it, what an opportunity to have in that kind of B2B sales environment. I love it.
I think also this is something that I learned recently, but in Quebec, since September 22nd, you have, if you're a private company and you get a breach, you have to report it.
Yep.
Now, I did not know this, but I was researching it because I'm helping a company go from an MSP to MSSP, and we're now using that in sales. So we're going, when you have an MDR in place and some other security practices, then that's what the banks and the insurance companies want to see.
Yep.
Plus, now you have a liability because you have to report it. So how to avoid that? We talked about the left of boom, right of boom. So how to avoid it? And if something happens, is that reporting included in your solution? And it's becoming a great sales pitch, because now we're going, well, if you don't subscribe to our security services, you are now a liability to our reputation. So we're going to have to question if we're going to keep you as a client.
It's interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, go ahead. Many states in the U.S. Have websites where you have to actually report as a requirement that you've had a security breach, and it's a public record. So if you've had any kind of security breach, you're required to actually report that. And if you don't, you could be fined. A lot of MSPs don't know that, right? So, oftentimes they'll deal with a situation like, let's just say, some sort of data loss, where they're like, oh, well, we didn't have much going on, but the amount of liability that they just inherited by not reporting that was vast. So if the state finds out that you had something like that happen and you didn't report it, you become now liable to the state, which is very interesting to think. But on the flip side of the coin, a lot of customers don't want to do it because it's public record, right? So they're like, oh, well, my competitors could use this against me.
Sure.
But,
and they will.
And they will, right? And that's the whole challenge is like, and of course, if you were representing that company, they out there say is, oh, well, that IT company was, didn't protect them against it. So it's as transparency evolves, we're becoming more and more responsible, even if we choose not to be, right? So like, there's legislation that is, being pushed to try to make that more and more transparent. So we definitely have a lot of liability. So we have to be cognizant here.
I think we made the case that cybersecurity matters. I could go off on a deeper limb and say it's probably one of the things that matters the most today. And I always say that you can't even have digital transformation if you don't have cybersecurity. But there was a recent study that a company did. I can't remember the name of the company, but I did an interview with them. So if you want to check it out, go on eChannel News. But what was cool about it, they asked the actual employees, like, do you care? Like, what do you care about clicking that thing? All right. And half the employees said, yeah, it's not my data, right? It's the company, right? So they didn't feel somehow attached to protect the data. And to them, as if they clicked on the wrong thing. Well, it's not my thing. It's the IT people, right? And it's a bit of a mindset of them. And then I dug in a little bit into the weeds. And, you've seen a lot of the recent layoffs, right? From Facebook to everybody in Twitter, whatever's going on over there. It's a bit of a mess. So just imagine I'm an employee that's been, kicked out, right? What am I going to do with clicking on stuff? All right. So you got an internal risk, that is the employees, a significant one if they don't care, an even more significant one if you do something bad to them or they're disgruntled for whatever reason. And I'm not even sure that there's any consequence, because they could just say, "Hey, I clicked on a thing, and you know, it wasn't my fault. I didn't know." All right. As a matter of fact, they could probably blame the company because they didn't have the proper, adequate training about compliance and all the other things they need to do to stop clicking on stuff. Right. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting piece of stat. Quick roundtable. What do you think of that? What do you think of that one?
I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I'll be honest with you. I think that we are probably on the precipice of having, where employees actually have cybersecurity risk scores associated with them, where it will become a metric where employers will now look at your digital footprint and kind of what, is around you because of the era and the world that we live in now. So I don't think it's, extremely near term, but I do think it is future term. And I do think that, a lot of all of the opportunity around I don't care, it's not my data, will probably start to shift quite a bit, because there will be probably ways to hold people accountable for those, because you're going to start seeing security policy and procedure that goes into acceptable use policies and data loss prevention policies and cyber awareness training that is going to hold people individually accountable. And so I don't think businesses can continue down the path of accepting all that risk themselves. They're going to have to make employees responsible for protecting the organization, especially with distributed workforces. But again, to your point, that's why you see so many layoffs happen so abruptly, is because it's like, I can't afford for them to come back into the office. If I'm gonna let them all go,
Right.
so I just cut them off right now. Right. So,
Yeah.
where you could come in before and like gather your stuff and like say bye to your friends
Walk
and get
out,
your
hang
box.
out, have a
Yeah.
cake.
And like, there's a cake and a goodbye and all this. It's just, you're gone. Right. It's like, I don't know how much I can trust you or distrust you. So that's my opinion. I think that we'll see more of that in the years to come.
Can you imagine,
I
Juan,
think
if on your resume you had to put your risk score? You have a risk score on your resume, so you can't even get hired if you have a risk score.
Mm-hmm.
Neil, what do you think?
Well, I think that risk score probably does exist in terms of social media. Let's face it, which it employs somebody, and the first thing to do is check all of their social media space. And if you're a tech company, you've probably got somebody who knows they can peek around some of those corners as well. But it is interesting. Again, I think it's maybe it's just on my brain today more than usual. But what it also speaks volumes to me on is like, okay, we know this risk is going to be covered in policies. It's going to become tighter and harder for individual staff members to avoid or claim that they're responsible. But again, to me, this kind of like goes, okay, this is surely the wrong way around to do it. Actually, what we need to do first of all is educate the people and get them to want to comply. Because the minute you try to force them into one direction, especially those dodgy salespeople, and I speak from experience, we'll find a way to work around the system. We'll find a way to change the processes. We'll find a way to cover our own backsides, because it's what sales guys are really good at.
Yeah.
So I think it's far better to go, actually, how do we get these people to engage and play with us rather than playing the game against us? Because these things, to me, they don't change. I can remember working at many sales floors where you'd go to the pub to have lunch and somebody would say something out of line. The manager would find out, you'd get back to the office and all their stuff would be in a cardboard box and they'd be escorted out of the building. So, if we're doing that digitally, we've done it physically. So it's not, and for me, it's not a new beast. And it's like, why didn't it work the old way around? Well, because we tried to hit them with a stick. So think maybe about actually how you incentivize people to support and help generate that positive culture within the organization. Because again, I'm coming at this very much from the sales front, but when I used to recruit teams of sales guys, we would very often, we would normally recruit, say, 6 guys. We would recruit 12 to go through the training academy, because we knew that of those 12, 6 people just wouldn't grasp the ability to sell software, because it wasn't a tangible. It's still quite new when I was coming through it at the beginning of that journey. So how can we be smarter this time around, Julian? What can we do this time around? I've got a great idea, like maybe an online community, a stage process, maybe there's something which we could be offering these guys, which may help them change cultures rather than just trying to break heads.
Totally.
If I can start with, we learned really quickly that how do you create $1 million business? Well, you just get Elon Musk to buy $1 billion company.
Yeah.
It's $1 million business, right? So things can happen really quickly. Sorry, I had to poke there. But I just want to bring out
just couldn't resist, could you? All right.
I couldn't resist. Yeah, Jason and
You've been sacked by Twitter.
Yeah, Jason in the comment talked about how an MSP should aim at education or educating and look at the risk to business and remove tech talk. I like that last bit, remove the tech talk. That kind of goes with
Yeah.
Neil's sales conversation. Oftentimes we talk about the technology behind cybersecurity, but in this case, we almost have to sell fear in a way to really open their eyes of what's going on. And I think that's becoming part of the sales cycle is to, a little bit sell the fear, but also to make it easy to understand, to really find a way to, I don't want to say dumb it down, but humanize the processes because
I agree.
it really needs to be something
Yeah, you're
that
right. I
people
think
grasp.
you made a good point there as well. I mean, the focus should be on risk and risk management, because I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, what's your tolerance for risk? If
Yeah.
you're a business and you really, you don't really care, because you sell, hamburgers on the beach, then that's cool. You don't care. But people who are running businesses, they have to have a certain level of risk tolerance to
Yeah.
figure out how much risk are you prepared, to take. Quite interesting. So now
I have a question, maybe.
sure.
Well, we again from Jason, he talked about cyber insurance. Now we learned at our IATSA event that oftentimes cyber insurance has little clauses that people might
Yeah.
not read. So maybe the question is, how can MSBs and clients ensure that they have a protection that is at least a baseline or a best practices or what do you call it, due diligence, so that their cybersecurity, if something does happen, will not refuse the claim?
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. And that's I've often mentioned this, as doing vendor due diligence. One of the things when I was building my MSP and I built my security practice, I waited 2 years after the bubble to actually, shore up my defenses internally, right? My contracts, every talk track, our sales process, the way we supported things, like all of those nuances had to be ready to go before I was willing to announce that we could offer it. Plus, I knew exactly what customers I was going to position it to, right? I knew exactly where this particular thing fit. I knew which door I could open every single time. And I think that, when you're thinking about cyber liability insurance, I think that really a great talk track. And one of the things we should be doing as part of our technology business review or our roadmap, our quarterly business review, is looking at their needs and saying, all right, what are your cybersecurity insurance requirements? And then let's see if everything I'm doing matches up to make that a reality. And how do I impact your business to become a true partner? I think where you're going there, Randall, is really a meaningful. Again, back to why my background is what it is. It's the seat at the table, right? Like, we have to secure our seat at that table, and we need to help because businesses don't know the questions to ask. So for us to just wait for them to ask us a question, it's usually too late. It's like, how did this happen? That's usually the question we get. Not, hey, can you tell me all the things that I can do to spend more money so that something doesn't happen? Like, we don't often get that, right? It's like we always wait till we are forced to make a decision. But our job is now that third component, the third leg of the stool I was talking about, is education. It's like, look, I want to try to do this before we get to that point because I need you to stay in business for me to stay in business. In order to do that, these are the things we have to do to make it work. So I love where you're going with that. I think this is a meaningful value creation point, and I think that we should embrace that 100%.
We're here to double click on one's insight about building your business. So there, you started off that how you repositioned your business
Yep.
to manage that.
Mhm.
What are some of the additional things that you would like MSPs to do to kind of prep themselves to be in the position to actually execute this right?
I think there's several things that you have to do. First and foremost, you need to know whether or not you can pass a security assessment, right? So, like, you check your house first, like, go look at the windows and doors. Like, are they locked? Can I get
Mhm.
in? Like, did you leave a key under the doormat? Like, do you have your password shared? Like, there's so many things that we need to look at internally. And then make sure that your story is something that you use it as an example, right? Here's all the policies and the procedures and processes that we put in place to protect our business internally. And here's the reasons why. You can use those as your meaningful stories so that you can explain, Here's how I'm protecting my business so that I'm here for you tomorrow, so that I don't fall victim to, ransomware attack in a customer's environment and then get sued and lose my business, right? Like they need to know you're going to be around. And so I would use that story of our journey over those 2 years to show here's all the policy and procedure that we put in place to protect us. And I need you to do the same thing, because if not, I can't do business with you. I can't absorb the liability from your business. I'm sorry, but I'm not charging you enough money to offset the liability of the lawsuit that I'm going to suffer when you get hit. If that's the case, I need to increase your premiums by $6,000 a month to retain an attorney to battle your defense when we get sued, right? Like I got to stay in business here, and you need to stay in business. I need you to do these things, right? So like that's where you really work internally as an organization to harden yourself, and then you use
Love
that
it.
as story externally.
Like,
You
I
know,
gotta ask a
great
question.
exercise.
Who in this room has had a car accident?
Oh,
Well, this relative, someone hit me.
Yeah, so you've been involved, and it's. I think it's the same thing with cybersecurity. One thing I liked about Juan's answer is that you said when you get hit, and I think it's inevitable. I think the
Right.
language we should be using is when you get attacked or when you get an intrusion, because it's no longer an if. It used to be an if. If we do everything right, you won't have to worry about this. But now it's when, and I think that's very important to change our language to show that, because just like driving a car, you're taking that risk, and it's going to happen sooner or later. Some it happens more often than others. Some it's rare. Sometimes it's somebody hitting us, not our fault, but we still have to pay the consequences.
Here's the thing that's scary, Randall, and I will say this is that I would venture to say, and I'll go out on a limb here, that if we went and did a cybersecurity full risk assessment on an organization, I would bet that over 98% of businesses already have had some sort of a breach. I'm just going to put that out there. I gander to say there's probably 100% of businesses just due through loose, data usage policies, but everybody's done it, right? We've all had some sort of data loss, and I promise you that most businesses don't really recognize that as a risk. Like they're like, oh, well, yeah, don't worry. I use some third party application, and, I allow them to sync that data to their home PC. There you go. Like all your data has been it's been compromised, right? But they don't see it that way, right? So it's our job to actually go in and educate the end user around, you've been hacked. Like you legitimately have already had this happen. Like if your insurance actually knew that you were doing this, you'd probably lose your policy overnight. And I'm not, again, back to that fear component. It's not necessarily fear, it's awareness, right? Because I need you to know, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to let you know it already happened, friend. You know what I mean? Like you did it. It's already,
You're
when
messed up.
you put your email on that person's phone and allow them to connect their personal device without a BYOD policy or a mobile device protection plan, like policy. You gave your data away. You said, hey, don't worry, your kids can go and see all that sensitive data about salaries and payroll. Like as soon as you handed them the phone to play the game, like injection risk, right? Like,
It's a really cool analogy here you brought up there, Randall, with insurance. Well, because whether you have an accident or not,
yeah,
you still got to pay your insurance. And last time I checked, I think if you don't have insurance, you can get a pretty big ticket. And you use your insurance when you really need to use it, right? When the big one comes, right? And same thing for health insurance. You could probably argue. So look, we jumped to the insurance. So let's talk about insurance, since we one of the components, right, of building your cybersecurity practice is insurance, right? And you got to get insurance, you got to maintain it, and B, you got to help your clients maintain insurance. And you're going to find, if not already, your customers come to you as an MSP and say, "Hey, my insurance company sent me this letter saying that what's my cybersecurity posture? What the hell does that mean?" Right? And they're threatening that if I can't answer these questions, um, my premiums are going up, right? And you as an MSP has got to go and, well, here's what you got to do. You just can't say, well, I don't know, right? So that is happening right now as we speak, and it's going to become, I think, more regulated from an insurance perspective. But I think, one, you would agree that not all the insurance companies are even up to speed yet, right, with this. They're just sort of getting into this now. They're realizing they're spending maybe a bit too much more money than they should in claims, and maybe they need to pull back on this. What's your take on what's happening with the insurance industry and MSPs?
It's interesting to watch, right? So you see the ones that are slow to adopt. It's usually the snake bitten ones that are, trying to shore themselves up against the risk, right? And they're like, I'm seeing a lot of insurance companies go back after they're hiring their internal cybersecurity. If you've ever had a cyber incident, like immediately there's like a cyber uh, agency that pops in and like starts doing a bunch of work on an infrastructure to figure out where the liability lies. And if you've ever been part of that, it's pretty eye opening. You definitely really feel like, oh my God, I hope I did everything right, because these guys are real true professionals. They're going in, they're looking at everything, and they're looking to see if you had any role to play in that situation, right? So, you know, if you're lucky enough, you won't get sued by your own insurance company or your customer's insurance company. But then on the other end of the stick, those insurance companies that are doing that, they're changing their regulations and their policies around how they do it. They're now being more proactive to say, before I'm even going to let you in the door, I need you to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And, I have a feeling that down the road, we may see where, certain MSPs might have to be certified by insurance companies. I don't know that to be true, but, one of the interesting things, and I think, I mentioned this the other day, Julian, is that I'm seeing insurance companies getting into cybersecurity, where they're saying, hey, we have an MSP that we own, and we offer cybersecurity products and services, and we will only insure you if you use this company and these services, and we'll then insure you appropriately. If not, then you should probably go see somebody else. And that is huge. One of the biggest insurance
Wow.
agents, I think they're a $44 billion insurance agency, made a $150 million or $120 million acquisition of an MSP, and they have an entire cybersecurity stack that they're going to go to market with. And they're not going to insure third-party companies, right? That's their market. That's how they're going to go in. So you
So
see
their
it,
stack or nothing.
right? So you're seeing this. It's like, if we can control the market, then why not, right? So
I don't know if that's short lived or not. I think that's actually a bad strategy, but we'll see how that works.
yeah,
Because if everybody does the same thing, right, then what's going to happen? And wait a minute, nobody's going to be unbreachable. So once that system gets breached, and then I've been insurance, I took my insurance because you tell me this
mhm,
MSP is going to rock it out for me, and I got breached. Well, I'm coming after you with guns a blazing,
yeah,
right? So I'm not sure they want to even absorb that risk. I think it's someone trying to make some short-term revenue there. I'd say back up a bit, rethink, and stay in your swim lane. Sometimes everybody want to become, everything, and you got to be careful there. But we'll see how that works. Curious. So let's jump to. So we talk a bit about insurance. It's very important, obviously, for both the MSP to be, up to speed as well as their customers. Um, and there are organizations, by the way, that actually will help you to figure out what your posture is, to figure out if you're, insurable or not, and so on. Let's talk about the skills gap, though. Now, everybody's heard now. There's a lot of people that's looking for people with the right talent.
yeah.
Um, Neil, maybe I start with you with this one. What's it like finding people, good people, that is?
Well, it is always hard, especially when you're talking about cybersecurity, because the bottom line is by the time you teach people in like a formal academic course what they should be looking for, what they've learned has already been bypassed and moved on to the next thing. So it's always a very long, like kind of like a running kind of beast to try and catch up with. I guess what I would say is that the key thing is making sure you've got people who are interested in these things. Don't actually just, the old IT manager was the guy who sat in a room in the 80s and someone said, who wants to run the IT department? And he's the only person to put his hand up. So don't let that be your approach to cyber security and say, hey, someone's got to manage this stuff. Because what I'm thinking from this conversation this evening is that, markets consolidate, mergers and acquisitions, they occur in the marketplace. We're going to consolidate down. So if your ambition is either to be acquired or be one of the acquirers, you need to make sure that you are market leader in this cybersecurity space, and you do that with the right acquisition. I mean, again, I can never get too far away from my sales upbringing, in the sense of, if you said to me, where do you find somebody who's really great at security? I'd say, I'd go and recruit me some hackers. That's what I'd do, because those are the guys who are breaking the systems already. Let's get them inside our paywall and help us develop the right systems to stop it happening in the first place. But maybe not that orthodox of an approach.
Just don't piss them off. I would say add that in the contract, a little fine print. Gwen, what's your situation? What's your what do you see happening out there with talent right now, skills?
Unfortunate as they may be, I think that this is, I mean, we saw the cybersecurity shortage coming years ago, right? In 2015, we were projecting like a 75% deficit in available resources for this particular era. It's gone exactly as planned, right? It happened, right? And not a lot of people were able to pivot fast enough and upskill and get into this market. There wasn't enough jobs early on to, pressure it. And now there's an oversaturation of available jobs, and, everybody's just rushing to try to, get to that point. And cybersecurity is it's not an easy thing to do, right? Like, it's not like building an infrastructure that you can be right, 65% of the time and it still work. Cybersecurity, you have to be right 100% of the time, because 99% isn't good enough. 1% of that, and they get through, and now you're like, everything that you worked on isn't good enough, right? So it's a really, really, really unique profession, because you have to be really good at it. And that's where I see a lot of these people coming into market. Like, it's just, we're still behind the curve. And it's unfortunate. This is one of the things, like, even with my book, all the money that we took in, we are offering out so that people can go and apply for certifications, because I know that times are tough and money's hard, and you can go and apply at our website, for cybersecurity certification. And, if you get approved, then you actually will pay for that certification. But, that's just my little teeny drop of the bucket to try to help out the situation. But it's a big problem. It's a big problem, and it's not going away
It's a big
anytime
problem by
soon.
the tune of a few million, right? I mean,
We're short.
almost every SOC I know is hiring people. Randall, what's your take on the skills gap?
I found it interesting that I was reading an article about the CIA, how they have to investigate these cyber security incidents, just like the RCMP here in Canada. And they're saying the biggest problem is recruiting, because they're used to lateral movement within that organization. So you might be working cybersecurity one week, and then the next week you're doing some sort of major crime, and vice versa. So you'll take somebody in major crimes and put them in cybersecurity, and it's just a culture of moving people around so they do multiple things, and it's just not working. So to me, the lesson is, if you're going to go for cybersecurity, you have to find the right people, and they have to be very specific to the tasks you're giving them. You can't kind of find somebody that kind of will do an overall overview, like putting somebody in a company and saying, okay, you're the cybersecurity guru, but they don't have the qualifications. That's why I believe that unless you're really going to invest a large chunk of change, you have to outsource your cybersecurity to a company that will have the people that will be able to give you the results that you need.
Yeah.
Where's MI6 and 007 when you need them? And what's the sidekick guy who knows all the tech stuff? Damn, why can't we replicate that? Um, an interesting thing I saw when I was down at the Cronus CyberFit event in Miami a few weeks ago. They were talking a lot about this, the human shortage, and the reality is that the only way, underscore the word only way, is through more automation. Because we just can't do it with humans anymore. So the more you can automate your cybersecurity stack, the more you could reduce the need or dependency on eyeballs and humans. And therefore, we have a chance of doing more with less humans type thing. But that seems to be, at least now, the only solution moving forward. So are we seeing more automation being picked up by cybersecurity vendors and their stacks as we move forward?
I believe so. It's just this morning I was talking with somebody from London, and they were saying, that they were working on a fully autonomous pen testing platform that was artificially intelligent that could do the work of over 75 people. And I thought it was really interesting to hear that, something that was so manual because of the fact that, it was taking in all these accounts is now being automated. I don't see it changing. I think that as we come together as an ecosystem, I think that all of us start to collaborate more and we're smarter together than we are, decentralized, and we can make a bigger impact as long as we combine our efforts, because there's a lot of great talent out here, but like we literally have to work together to make it, work as a single instance than, a distributed instance. So I think we're going to see a lot more integrations. When I'm a big champion of that is try to, get every week. Cause I say, be a master of, there's a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I'm like, just be a master of some, right? Like just be really good at something. And then we can work together to be good together on everything. Right. And that's where I think that we're going to see a lot of integration, automation come into play. And with the consolidation, you're seeing a lot of that too, right? They're putting together all these comprehensive stacks. And I know, Julian, you got a great program that you're putting together of all these things that work together. So I see it. I think that's the future as well. Neil, what's your thought?
I'm gonna, good point to actually just chat a bit about that. We came up with a concept like a very simple thing that it takes a village to solve this problem, and I don't know what you should be in the village or not, but I just think it's like everything. Let me see if I could pull up a screen on that. Yeah, there you go. So this is the ecosystem that we're baking out that Juan and Randall, we all saw as we launched it a few weeks ago. So it had a little bit of, finding all the vendors that make sense, then a marketplace where we can showcase the vendors that actually have the right stuff, right? And then allow all the MSPs to find, search, transact, become partners. Um, we had a marketing research tool to allow the MSPs to reach out to their customers and find out what they really think and want. And then we had content that you could send to them through your marketing automation platform. Then you could join peer groups, and then you can take a sales training called Selling Risks. And then you could find all the things for education and so on. So that was just the first, 10 components that we baked out. Um, what's your take on pulling all the things we need in an ecosystem, Gwen, to help the MSPs figure out what they want? What's your honest feelings on them?
I think that it answers a lot of challenges. One of the things from a managed services perspective, I talk about it all the time in my, an accidental entrepreneur talk that I give. And, starting out where we started, we didn't necessarily know how to run a business. We didn't necessarily know we were going to have taxes and all these other fees and all this other stuff and employees. And, now we're running multi-million-dollar businesses. And along the way, we maybe didn't know that we needed to build a strategy. I know my first business, I had no idea. Like I didn't have anything close to what I did in my second one. I learned so many lessons in my first one that really required me to be very diligent. And that's how I built and scaled a multi-million-dollar business in a short period of time. And to that point, without strategy and structure and design that's built for success, there really can't be any, right? It's just a hope. And I think that, all as an entrepreneurs, we have love and we have hope, and we're like, man, one day, hopefully I make it. It's like, that's really not a strategy on success. Like hope is not a strategy, right? And that's where you have to, having a meaningful product and go to market strategy and an actual plan for success, I think will be really well received, because just like me and any other person, we all need plans for success. Like I don't know how, like to always create the effective plan. I lucked out, obviously, on my last one. It worked, if you can, and then I was able to share that with the ecosystem. But I really like what you guys are doing there. I think that it makes a lot of sense. And, for me, I think we need that kind of thing. And I've been talking about marketplaces and ecosystems for a long time. And I felt like this is a really unique opportunity that you guys have created.
Well,
I think
you go ahead.
I'll just pick up on that point from one there, which was strategy. And this for me is key because again, it's this weakness with MSPs. Hopefully, because of the fact that they're watching this and watching the master chats, they're getting the hang of this, which is actually build that strategy, become a thought leader in this MSP space. It is not difficult to do, but it does require effort, and then it requires time to implement it. And then by building communities, building the correct stacks in that kind of trusted way, the opportunities there is still huge for everybody. But for me, it's strategy. Too often, businesses are still very reactive. They respond to just one change, and it's like, no, you would never escape firefight mode if you're always going to be reactive. Build a strategy so you know where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And then, yes, we have to adapt. We have to change, and it's going to evolve as we go through. But yeah, strategy, culture, strategy, getting the right people in the right places, automation, all these things which we've talked about, not just today, but some of the things come up in every master chat. And it's like, come on, put those things together, get that support, and I just see so many opportunities for the few. Because let's be honest, the few MSPs who will watch this and go, I want to be part of that. That they're only going to be a small number of MSPs, but those who do, wow, are they going to have a good fun ride and see some real success?
I agree.
The thing about our topic about cybersecurity is that you can't go about this as a trial and error type, experiment, because any errors will be so costly they could really wipe out your business. So having a community where you can learn from the mistakes of others will save you from that trial and error, so that you just get the good advice. And I mean, I always think about Terminator. The way that the criminals, the cyber criminals, they're organized like a company. They have HR, they have customer success managers. They really think about this as a business, and they're really organized. They're using AI, and the only way to fight a Terminator is to have your own Terminator. So you need your own AI, which again, none of us can do by ourselves. So it's finding the right partner. Find your Terminator, because you are being attacked, and once you see those little red eyes, it's too late.
I'm never going to be able to see you differently now, Randall. I'm always thinking about the Terminator now. We're waiting for the red eyes, man. I love that.
That's why he's wearing glasses. He's in disguise right now.
There you go.
The ecosystem is really, at the end of the day, it's actually very simple. It's about what exactly is required, right, to help all these companies, particularly the MSSPs and MSPs, to kind of scale, get their business, and so on, and pulling it all together. And I think that's what we're trying to get at. There's not one part. There's a lot of moving parts, and the sooner you figure out, where you are in that ecosystem and in your journey, your own, journey, your maturity level within that space, the easier it becomes to see what you need next to move forward. One in your as you move through the process and you set up your strategy, and you measured twice, three times before you start cutting, like a good carpenter, and you've got your business going. At which point, and how do you scale, go from a million to 3 million to 8 million? What does that look like in your experience?
I talk to a lot of MSPs often about this. I was talking to one last night. He said, I've been in business for about 18 years. And I said, and he's like, I've never been able to crack it. And I said, so when was the last time you stopped to build the process for growth? He goes, you know what, honestly, I never did it, until recently. Like I hear it now, I see it. And it's really, if you don't plan to grow and you don't understand, and actually put some teeth behind growing your business. When I started off mine, I started off with a blank sheet of paper and a budget and a forecast, and I built a profit protection program. And I said, I will not, under any circumstance, change my price. Beauty of that is, in the 6 years that I did it, I never changed my price, from Colorado to Miami. And all the 16 locations in between, I had the same price and I had the same value proposition, and I sold into every single market the exact same way, and it worked, right? But I had a plan. The only reason that I outperformed my 4-year business, my budget, was because I actually knew exactly what I needed to do. I knew exactly how much I needed to grow. I knew exactly when to hire people. I knew exactly what I needed to sell and how many products and services. I knew my customer penetration and my saturation that I needed every single month with every customer. And I slowly stepped through those points. And then as I grew, I gave me the autonomy to actually grow at certain inflection points. It's 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, 15. And then it scales really easily from 15 to about 20, because then it's just a matter of just, adding to your processes really refined at that point. And that,
Interesting.
so all those places are places, those are plateaus of, you got to stop, pivot, change, because you got to reshape the company. There's new processes and procedures that you have to meld and mold. And it's just, it's really dictating. And you can start where you're at. Like, you can just say, all right, every year we started with a new budget, pretended like nothing happened. So I reset the thing and said, okay, based on here's where we're at, here's how much monthly recurring revenue we're going to add each individual month. Here's everybody's their responsibility for it. And then here are all the numbers that we're going to measure to make sure we're getting there. And it was really fun because everybody was into it. Like, everyone knew the number. They knew they had these little things they had to do. Their little, everyone had a small number, and we all watched this thing grow. And so, first things first, I call 2022 the year of the strategic MSP when I started talking about it in 19. And in 20, I said the same thing. In 21, I said the same thing. I keep saying it because it's all about strategy. If you don't have one, you're never going to get anywhere. So just plot a map and then aim for it, and then make sure you do it. Because that's where the hard part comes in, is like, every month is like, all right, we need $1,500 in new recurring revenue this month. How are we going to do it? I don't know. How are we going to do it? We need to make it happen. You have to put pressure on yourself to climb those mountains.
Go on. I mean, we talk sometimes. I find we may talk over some MSPs heads a little bit. When you
Sure.
say strategy, they need a strategy. Could you
Yeah.
could you make a quick definition of what you mean by that?
Yeah. And I will say, let's just think about it. Like, just, if you were to take a map and say, right now I'm at, $1,000, maybe I'm at $10,000 in recurring revenue. Every single quarter, I should be adding $5,000 of new recurring revenue. That may be a big goal. $1,500 in recurring revenue. Make it easy, right? That's, $600 a month for the next 3 months. Like, it's not a lot, right?
Hmm.
And from that, that's your strategy of growth, right? And then you look at, here's how much I'm going to grow, and I'm going to add this total number of seats based on my firm fixed pricing. So when I grow to this point, I have this many more seats. Does that mean I need more people? And if no, because of, my total ticket count right now, then I can say, okay, well, I need to add another person at this many seats. So now I have a strategy on how I'm going to grow my business, and I have a strategy on how many people I'm going to need. Those two metrics alone is the first start, right, to growing a business. It's knowing how many I needed to add and knowing how many people I need. But in the middle of that should be how much profit I'm making. So I need to make sure that I got that number in there, because if the business doesn't make money, it doesn't stay open. So, right. So those are those two easiest metrics. And for those that want to jump on, I'm going to be doing bi-weekly sales trainings coming up starting in December. I'll be sharing a lot of this. You can also get some of this from the mspownerhandbook.com. You can go and buy the book and actually see a lot of the strategy in the quarterly business review process that actually talks a little bit about that. So they can go and buy this book and then know that this money is going back to the industry to help, get certifications for those that apply. So for everyone that's here, go apply. You can go maybe get a certification, voucher or something you can champion along the way, but you have to have a strategy on growth.
Yeah.
And then you
Makes
understand
sense.
how many people, and then you keep moving.
I think the
Love it.
interesting thing about Julian, interesting just to quickly throw in there, Julian, very quickly, is people who are in that community within the platform, they can build that strategy. So we have a tool in there where what we do is we encourage them to build their vision, their mission statements. Then we very much build upon kind of the OKR. So no KPIs, let's go to OKRs a bit more switched on. So we go to OKR, so we build that, only measure what you truly need to measure. But we underpin that by adding in through to what we call work plans and tasks. So we drive it real granular, and it's all automated, all driven by AI, and all supporting people. So they can build those things as well as joining virtual masterminds, all within the community. So we think we're getting all those bases covered.
We got to plug in that book from Juan as well, because these are things that we sort of know instinctively that every business needs, especially MSPs, since we play in that space. But all the tools are available, And that's the whole point. If you really, really want to scale your business, the tools are available, the experts are available. You can reach out to Juan and anybody else and get some insights, because that's what you need to do. Start working. What's the thing? On your business, not in your business. But
all
we've
the
got
time.
5 minutes left, and I'll do a bit of a round table and give everybody a kind of a couple minutes to sort of wrap up. I know we've got some questions coming in from LinkedIn and so on, and we're trying to send some stuff back, but things maybe not as fast as we'd like it to be. But one question, one maybe for you: what margins should we aim at per seat?
You know, I often ask that in reverse. How much money do you need to run your business? It's really predicated around what does it take to run your business is the first question, and then from there, once you understand how much it takes to run your business, then dictate. But I know everyone likes to shoot for 50%, but if 50% isn't what keeps the doors open, then that's the wrong answer, right? So
Yeah.
if you need 75% because you live in a very expensive area and you got a high-rise building, I mean, you may have a different number. So I hate to give somebody that loose advice without understanding what does it take to run your business? What is the cost of your overhead? How many people do you have? Every situation is different. If I
Yeah.
tell you 50% and you got 40 people working for you, that's probably the wrong number, right? So
Yeah, it really varies. It's a very difficult question to answer. And as one said, depends on where you live. If you live
yeah,
in
it
a
could.
very
Yeah,
expensive
if,
city, like
if you
try
live in
living
New
in
York,
Toronto,
yeah,
or New York, or LA, and see what that number is going to be. But or London for that matter. Um,
I, I
we've
think
go ahead.
I was just saying, just picking up on that again. I think the key thing I always say is that I would go back to kind of strategy and beyond strategy is vision. What are you trying to achieve?
yeah.
Is it do you want to replicate what one achieve? Are you going to want a 20 million turnover business and I'm going to exit? That's going to be your vision. That would also be something you use to determine your numbers. The other thing as well to always be mindful of is make sure that you're not kind of like don't build a stool with only one leg. So if you know what you need for your sales guys, make sure you understand operations and finance as well. Because too often, I mean, I worked with a tech company once who was run by a chartered accountant, and his biggest problem was that he just looked at the numbers, didn't consider anything else. So he went, okay, each sales guy generates X revenue. I want a business this size. Let's double the sales team. Didn't check whether marketing could supply, that much more quality clients. So remember, it's not just your sales; it's got to be your marketing, your operations, your finance. Look after one, all the others float upwards.
And I will say
Complicated.
that, yeah, there's a slippery slope there. A lot of people will say, well, one, I can get away with 30%. And I'm like, without a sales team, because
Yeah.
you're missing, there's no margin for the salespeople. How are you going to incentivize them, right? Like, are you paying out of your pocket? Because now you've just diluted your margins. Now you're at, you're at 20% now,
Well, people
right?
work
So,
for free, don't you know?
yeah, well, it could happen that way.
Was it the quiet work type thing? Randall, what's your final take? We've got a couple minutes left. What's your take on the whole thing?
Well, here we are, Mastermind Chat number 23. The last few have been on cybersecurity. I think our discussion today and the last few have made it clear that if you're an MSP, you need to add that second S. You have to be security focused. If you don't do that, you will be left behind. Some insurance company, as we learned today, might come and scoop up your client because you can't provide those services. Do
There
it.
you go. Do it. And go on. Give us a bit of a plug from your new company, Hack Where I believe it's called. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
hacker. Yep. It's cyber education, cybersecurity education and training. Come and see us. Visit the website, hackware.com, HACWARE.com. Come over and see what we're doing. Follow us on LinkedIn. We would appreciate it. Obviously, we're part of this wonderful ecosystem here, and we really would love to help with that cybersecurity education component, educating that end user, really helping you. We're going to be doing some sales tips and tricks in December. So we'll be having how to position cybersecurity services. Would love to have you guys join us. It's a really great company led by a really wonderful CEO named Tiffany Ricks. And I can't say enough about the team. So come over and see us. Love to have you.
Looking forward to it. So we didn't talk about the cybersecurity tech stack, because that's a loaded question. With over 4,000 vendors out there right now,
Yeah.
choose wisely. And as part of the whole process as well, we're actually vetting lots of cybersecurity vendors right now to boil down to the right, 50 or so that makes the most sense. So we understand the problems. We're trying to solve them one at a time. And the ecosystem is sort of where we're going to hang our hats. and stay tuned. Lots more coming. If you want to learn more about the ecosystem, you could start at iotssa.com. We'll start putting information on there. Eventually, it's going to have its own website and so on. But right now, we're just early days, baking this out, as they say, flying a plane and tweaking the engines at the same time. But we're definitely very, very focused on solving the cybersecurity nut. Today was a really great experience. And how do you scale your cybersecurity business? And I want to thank Juan and Randall and Neil as normal. And thank you for your contribution. Hope everybody got some good stuff out of this.
Good as always.
Always
Cheers.
a pleasure.
All right, everybody. We're going to end the stream now.